You know that feeling when your world stops? One second you're standing there, living your life. And the next second, a doctor's words, a phone call, a moment just freezes everything, changes the air you breathe. That happened to me. Only my world didn't just stop. It became a desperate, terrifying race against time. And the people I thought would be in the trenches with me? They were too busy planning a party. My name is Sarah Jenkins. I'm a single mom to the most incredible little girl, Lily. Lily was everything to me. Still is. She was 5 years old when we got the diagnosis. Acute myeloid leukemia, a particularly aggressive form. The words hit me like a physical blow. The world blurred. All I could focus on was the doctor's calm, serious voice explaining the standard treatment, chemotherapy, hopeful but not guaranteed success rates for this type. And then, he mentioned an alternative, a new, more aggressive therapy combined with a specialized bone marrow transplant, available at only a couple of research hospitals in the country. Higher success rates for aggressive cases. But there was always a but. The but was the cost. Our insurance was decent, but it wouldn't cover the full extent of this experimental, highly specialized treatment. Not even close. We were looking at a price tag approaching $500,000, maybe $500,000 or more, depending on complications, length of stay, post-transplant care. $500,000. It felt like saying $500 million. It was an impossible number for me. I worked hard. 2 jobs sometimes, but I lived paycheck to paycheck, building what little security we had one careful step at a time. Saving $500K was a lifetime away. A different universe. Panic is a cold thing. It grips you, makes it hard to think. But beneath the panic was a fierce, primal instinct. I had to save my daughter. Whatever it took, I started researching, applying for grants, looking into clinical trials, reaching out to charities. Every door I knocked on was either a dead end, a long waiting list, or offered only a fraction of what was needed. Time was not on our side. The doctors were clear. The standard treatment was a gamble, and the aggressive therapy offered the best chance, but needed to start soon. My thoughts turned to my family. My older brother, David, and his fiancée, Jessica. David had always been the golden child, smart, successful, went into finance. Jessica came from a wealthy family, and she was also a high-powered executive. They lived in a different world than I did. A world of luxury apartments, expensive cars, and seemingly endless disposable income. Our parents, while not wealthy themselves, always doted on David and Jessica. Proud of their success and the lifestyle they had built. I swallowed my pride, pushed aside the years of feeling like the less successful sibling, and called David. I explained Lily's diagnosis, the standard treatment options, and the specialized therapy that offered a better chance. I told him about the cost, the black hole of $500,000. I didn't ask for the full amount, not immediately. I asked if he and Jessica could help, if they could contribute significantly, maybe help me bridge the gap, buy us time while I scrambled for the rest. This was my daughter's life. Family helps family, right? Especially when they have the means. David listened, his tone initially sympathetic. But when I mentioned the number, the $500,000 treatment, his sympathy seemed to cool. He got quiet. He said he'd talk to Jessica and call me back. The call came back 2 days later. It wasn't David. It was Jessica. Her voice was perfectly pleasant, but formal. "Sarah," she began, skipping any pleasantries about Lily. "David and I have discussed your request. It's a terribly unfortunate situation with Lily. Truly." "Thank you, Jessica. We're hoping for the best with this new treatment. It just offers so much more hope than the standard chemo." "Yes. Well," she cut me off smoothly. "Regarding the financial aspect, We simply aren't in a position to contribute that kind of sum right now. I was confused. Not in a position. Jessica, I'm not asking for all of it right away. But even a significant amount, or a loan, would give us the time we need to. Sarah, our finances are quite tied up at the moment. She interrupted again, a hint of impatience creeping in. We have significant upcoming expenses. Upcoming expenses? I felt a chill. What could possibly be more important than saving a child's life? What expenses? The wedding, of course, she said, as if it were obvious. It's only a few months away. As you know, planning a wedding of this scale is incredibly costly. We're finalizing contracts, making deposits. It's simply not feasible to divert $500,000 right now. My blood ran cold. The wedding. David and Jessica's wedding. They had been talking about it for months, a huge, elaborate affair they were planning. Destination wedding in Italy, designer dresses, celebrity chef, exclusive venue. Rumor had it, the budget was astronomical. But I never knew the actual number. The wedding? I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. You're telling me you can't help save my daughter's life because you're spending the money on a party? On a wedding? There was a brief pause. It's not just a party. Sarah, Jessica said, her voice stiffening. It's our special day. The start of our lives together. It's a significant investment in our future. And frankly, $500,000 is a substantial amount, even for a wedding. We've budgeted meticulously, diverting it for unexpected medical costs simply isn't possible at this stage. Unexpected medical costs? This is my daughter's life. My 5-year-old daughter is fighting for her life. And you're talking about catering menus and flower arrangements? The shock was wearing off, replaced by a white-hot rage I had never felt before. Sarah, please, be reasonable. Jessica's tone became condescending. Medical costs are unpredictable. Where does it end? This is your responsibility as a parent. We wish you the best. Truly. We'll keep Lily in our thoughts. Keep her in your thoughts? I was shouting now, tears of fury and pain streaming down my face. Your thoughts won't save her life. Money will. Money you are blowing on a ridiculous, extravagant party. I'm ending this call. Sarah, Jessica said, her voice sharp. Final. I don't appreciate your tone. We've given you our answer. Do not contact us again about this. And she hung up. She hung up on me. On a desperate mother begging for help to save her child, because that help would interfere with her wedding budget. $500,000 for a party, refusing to spend that same amount or even a fraction of it to save my daughter. That was the hook. The unimaginable cruelty. The stark, sickening contrast that defined the most horrific moment of my life. The wedding was exactly 3 months away. Those 3 months became a living hell. While I spent every waking moment researching treatments, navigating insurance nightmares, talking to doctors, and working every extra shift I could get, David and Jessica were posting excitedly on social media about tasting menus, choosing bands, and sending out invitations to their exclusive destination wedding in Lake Como, Italy. The sheer opulence they showcased felt like a slap in the face every single time. News about the wedding filtered through the family. The designer gown, the private jet for the wedding party, flying in specific flowers from Holland. The cost was indeed spiraling towards, and likely exceeding, $500,000. Meanwhile, Lily started the standard chemotherapy. It was brutal on her little body. She was so brave, but she was fading. The doctors urged me again about the specialized therapy. The window is closing. Sarah, Dr. Ramirez, her oncologist, told me gently. Her best chance is that treatment, but we need to make arrangements very soon. I tried contacting David again, bypassing Jessica. I sent him pleading emails. outlining Lily's worsening condition, sharing photos of her pale, weak little face. I detailed the specific research hospital, the names of the specialists, the exact cost breakdown. I begged him, brother to sister, family to family. His responses were cold, brief, and infuriatingly detached. He didn't mention the wedding, but his refusal was firm. Sarah, I'm sorry, but our position hasn't changed. We simply don't have access to those kinds of liquid funds right now. The vast majority of our assets are tied up in investments and wedding expenses. This is a massive financial burden, and frankly, it's not something we can take on. He even added, perhaps you should look into government aid or charities. That's what those are for. Government aid, charities. I was doing all of that. But it wasn't enough, and time was running out. He was pushing me away, washing his hands of it, prioritizing the color of napkins over his niece's life. I even reached out to my parents, hoping they could intervene. They loved Lily, doted on her. Surely, they would convince David and Jessica, or even contribute themselves? But my parents were weak, easily manipulated by David and Jessica, constantly seeking their approval. They expressed sympathy for Lily, but when I brought up asking David and Jessica for help, they got uncomfortable. Oh, Sarah, you know how busy David and Jessica are with the wedding? Mom said nervously. And it's costing them a fortune. We really can't ask them for that kind of money now. It's their special time. Special time? Mom, Dad, Lily is dying. How can a wedding be more important than your granddaughter's life? Don't say that. Sarah! Dad exclaimed, flustered. Of course, we want Lily to get better, but David and Jessica have planned this for so long. They've spent so much. It's not fair to ask them to give it all up. Maybe you should look at other options. Less expensive ones. Other options? Less expensive than saving my daughter's life? There were no less expensive options that offered a real chance. Their complicity, their prioritization of David and Jessica's lavish party over Lily's life, cut almost as deep as David and Jessica's direct refusal. They were enabling this cruelty, choosing the golden child's superficial happiness over their grandchild's very existence. The wedding happened. I didn't go, of course. I was by Lily's bedside, but I saw the photos plastered all over social media. The stunning venue overlooking the lake, Jessica in her breathtaking designer gown, David in his tailor-made suit. Hundreds of guests flown in from around the world. Mountains of flowers, gourmet food, live music, fireworks over the lake. It was exactly as extravagant, as obscene, as rumored. A $500,000 fairy tale. And every smiling photo of David and Jessica, every post detailing the lavishness, was a fresh wound, a reminder of what they chose instead of saving my daughter. Lily's condition worsened. She got an infection. She was so frail, so tired. The doctors told me the standard treatment wasn't working as well as they hoped. The window for the specialized therapy was narrowing dangerously. There were days I sat by her hospital bed, holding her tiny hand, watching the rise and fall of her chest, and felt utter, complete despair. I had tried everything. Begged, borrowed, a little from friends, but nowhere near enough. Worked myself to the bone, and my family, the people who were supposed to be my support, had chosen a party over her life. The injustice was a physical weight, pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. I felt helpless, alone, and broken. I remember one particularly dark night. Lily was sleeping fitfully. I was sitting in the quiet hospital room, scrolling through photos from David and Jessica's wedding on my phone. Photo after photo of their joy, their wealth, their celebration. And it hit me. They weren't just prioritizing a party. They were actively choosing a thing over a life. a fleeting moment of extravagance over years of my daughter's potential future. The sheer moral bankruptcy of it was staggering. Despair started to boil into something else. Rage. A cold. Focused. Burning rage. Not just at David and Jessica, but at my parents for enabling them. At the unfairness of the world. But mostly, at the idea that they could get away with it. That they could make that choice and face no consequences. In that moment, watching my daughter fight for every breath, I made a promise, to her and to myself. I would find a way to save her, no matter what. And once she was safe, I would make them understand the price of their cruelty. I wouldn't just let this go. I wouldn't just forgive and forget. They needed to face the truth of what they had done, and they needed to pay for it. Not just financially, but in terms of their reputation, their conscience, everything they valued. The helpless mother disappeared, replaced by a woman fueled by righteous fury and a fierce determination to seek justice. The fight for Lily's life became my sole focus, and it became a fight I waged largely alone, but with incredible support from outside my family. Finding a solution, I redoubled my efforts. I found a nonprofit organization that helped connect families with research hospitals and potential funding sources for experimental treatments. Through them, I discovered a clinical trial for a slightly modified version of the therapy at a hospital specializing in pediatric leukemia, still incredibly expensive. But the trial participation reduced the direct cost, making it potentially achievable, though still a monumental task. I launched an aggressive online crowdfunding campaign. I sold my car, my modest jewelry, anything of value. I took out a second mortgage on my small house, plunging myself into significant debt. Friends, colleagues from my old engineering job and the diner, even strangers donated through the crowdfunding. It was a grueling, exhausting process, but slowly, painfully, the impossible amount started to feel slightly less impossible. It showed me the incredible kindness of strangers compared to the cruelty of my own blood. The fact that I had to beg strangers for money while my brother spent $500,000 on a party became a powerful, unspoken part of the crowdfunding story, which garnered national attention and outrage online. Lily started the specialized treatment. It was touch and go, the hardest fight of her young life. But she was a warrior. Weeks turned into months in the hospital, a roller coaster of small victories and terrifying setbacks. But she was fighting. And she was alive, gathering evidence. While I was fighting for Lily in the hospital, emotionally and financially drained, I was also quietly, methodically, gathering evidence, fueled by that cold resolve. I knew that once Lily was stable, I would need proof. I documented every step of my desperate fundraising journey. I kept records of every grant application, every loan denial, every asset I sold. I saved screenshots of the crowdfunding page, the heartfelt messages from strangers, contrasting with the empty silence from my family. Crucially, I documented my attempts to get help from David, Jessica, and my parents. I had saved the cold emails from David. I had detailed notes from my phone calls with Jessica and my parents, writing down dates, times, and their exact words of refusal immediately after the calls. I had even managed to record a couple of later phone conversations with David, legally permissible in my state, as I was a party to the conversation, where he reiterated his refusal, sounding increasingly annoyed that I was still asking, even mentioning the wedding expenses again weeks after it was over. Complaining about remaining debts from it, I also saved everything related to the wedding's cost. Screenshots of social media posts bragging about vendor choices, news articles that mentioned the budget, even publicly available photos from high-end vendors they used, like the florist or caterer, that were known to cost astronomical amounts. I created a detailed timeline of their wedding planning luxury versus Lily's declining health and my desperate pleas. Over the next year, Lily slowly, miraculously, recovered. It was a long road of therapy and follow-up, but she was in remission. She was alive. Saved by the grace of strangers, grants, my own desperate measures, and her incredible strength, not by the family who had the means but chose not to help. During this time, I rebuilt my life. I took a less demanding job to focus on Lily's recovery, but I was stable. I was deep in debt from the second mortgage and loans, but I had my daughter, and that was worth everything. The crowdfunding money had helped significantly, and the public support had been overwhelming. Meanwhile, things in David and Jessica's perfect world started to crack. It turned out the $500,000 wedding wasn't just extravagant, it was financially reckless. Even for them, a large portion of the cost had come from loans or was put on credit lines David had leveraged against future earnings he hadn't secured yet. His investments weren't as solid as he pretended. Jessica's job, while high-paying, wasn't as secure as they implied. The bulk of the wedding money had actually come from David's parents' trust funds or involved leveraging his parents' assets, money they were afraid to ask for again for Lily after demanding so much for their party. Their refusal wasn't just about the wedding budget. It was about protecting their own precarious financial state, maintaining a facade of wealth they didn't fully possess liquidly, and prioritizing that facade, the wedding, and their own security over their dying niece. They weren't spending disposable income. They were overextending themselves for show, and they simply refused to stretch further, even for a life. It was pure, selfish calculation masked by wedding costs. As news of Lily's recovery, funded by public generosity and my struggle, became more widely known, thanks in part to the crowdfunding story going viral. Questions started being quietly asked within the wider family circle and their social set. Didn't David and Jessica just have that massive wedding? Couldn't they have helped? My parents, who had enabled the refusal and benefited tangentially from David's financial maneuvering, perhaps receiving gifts or help that they prioritized over Lily, started facing pressure and judgment from other relatives and even some of their own friends. They suddenly became very uncomfortable, their carefully constructed image of a successful, generous family cracking. Then, David's financial world started to crumble for real. One of his major investments tanked, and combined with the wedding debt, he was in serious trouble. He was facing lawsuits, potential bankruptcy, and professional ruin. Jessica's job was on the line due to company cutbacks. They were in a genuine crisis, far worse than the tight spot they claimed during my pleas for Lily. And due to the public knowledge of my struggle and Lily's recovery, their cold refusal was being highlighted, making them look monstrous and severely damaging their reputation within their professional and social circles. Circles where reputation and connections were everything. Suddenly, they needed something from me. Not just money, which I didn't have to give them anyway. They needed me to make the bad press go away. They needed me to forgive them publicly, to say it was all a big misunderstanding, a difficult family matter that was resolved. They needed to save face, save their careers, save their reputation. This is when they came to me. A year and a half after Lily's recovery. David called, his voice not smug or cold, but hesitant, almost humble. He asked if they could meet me. I agreed, choosing a neutral, public location, a quiet coffee shop, far from their usual haunts. I brought Mr. Chen with me, not as my lawyer, but as a silent, professional observer. They arrived, looking pale and strained, a stark contrast to the beaming couple in the wedding photos. My parents were with them, looking incredibly uncomfortable. They sat down, avoiding my gaze. Mark cleared his throat. "Sarah," he started, his voice low. "Thank you for meeting us. We know we messed up. Badly." Jessica took over, tears welling up in her eyes. "We are so sorry. Sarah, about Lily, about not being there for you. We were so caught up in the wedding, in our own lives. We weren't thinking straight. It was selfish, cruel. We can see that now." My parents added their own hesitant apologies, mumbling about difficult times and poor judgment. They talked about how stressful things had been for them recently, hinting at David's financial woes and the reputational damage. They spoke about wanting to make amends, to heal the family rift. They talked about wanting to be in Lily's life now that she was better. And then came the request. Not directly for money, but for something far more valuable to them at that moment. My public forgiveness. A statement that we had reconciled. That I understood they were under pressure. That I didn't blame them anymore. Something that would stop the whispers. Salvage their reputation. Maybe even help David navigate his financial mess by presenting a united family front. They needed me to be the forgiving, understanding sister they had denied when I desperately needed them. They were begging. I listened patiently, calmly. I didn't interrupt their apologies, their excuses, their veiled requests for help wrapped in pleas for forgiveness. Mr. Chen sat silently beside me, taking notes. When they finished, the silence in the coffee shop felt deafening. I looked at them. David, who chose flowers over his niece. Jessica, who prioritized place settings over a little girl's life. My parents, who enabled the cruelty and turned their backs when I needed them most. They sat there, expecting absolution, expecting me to wave a magic wand of forgiveness and make their problems disappear, just because they were finally hurting. Are you finished? I asked, my voice calm, steady, utterly devoid of the warmth they were seeking. David nodded, looking uncertain. Good, I said. I took a breath, gathering my strength. Not for an emotional outburst, but for a cold, factual delivery of truth. You say you're sorry. You say you weren't thinking straight. You say you were caught up in your lives. Let me tell you what you were actually doing. I didn't raise my voice, but my words cut through the air like ice shards. My daughter, Lily, was dying. Her best chance at survival cost approximately $500,000. I came to you, my family. Desperate, I laid bare my worst fears, my financial inability to cover the cost alone. I begged you for help, not for a handout, for a chance to save her life. I looked directly at David and Jessica. You were spending $500,000 on a wedding, a party, a lavish, extravagant display of wealth and status. When I asked for help, Jessica, you told me you were not in a position because your finances were tied up with wedding expenses. David, you told me you didn't have access to those kinds of liquid funds because your assets were tied up in investments and wedding expenses. You dismissed me. You told me to look for charity. You chose flowers, food, invitations, and a destination party over my daughter's life. I turned to my parents. And you backed them up. You told me I shouldn't burden them, that their wedding was important. You chose their party over your granddaughter. I leaned forward slightly, my voice dropping, becoming even more intense. You didn't just refuse to help. You stood by and watched while I had to sell everything I owned, take on massive debt, and beg strangers on the internet for money, all while you were posting photos of your champagne toasts and fireworks. You knew the stakes. You knew the cost. And you made your choice. They shifted uncomfortably, trying to interrupt, but I held up a hand, silencing them. You mentioned making amends. You mentioned healing the rift. You want forgiveness. You want me to make your current problems go away, to salvage your reputations. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. But you are only asking now because you are in trouble. Because your financial world is collapsing and your reputation is being questioned. Not because you suddenly realize the value of my daughter's life, but because your cruelty is finally having consequences for you. I know you didn't just refuse because of the wedding budget being tied up, I stated, looking them directly in the eye. I know about David's overextended investments and the wedding loans you leveraged against your parents' assets. David, this wasn't about tied-up funds. It was about protecting your risky bets and maintaining a facade, even at the expense of a child's life. I looked at my parents. And I know you weren't just trusting Mark or not wanting to burden them, I said, referring back to the previous story's context, though I could adapt this twist here to simply state they were aware of David's actual financial instability and still prioritized the wedding extravagance, even discouraging me from asking. Maybe hoping his investments would pay off later and they'd avoid the burden. Let's use the version from the outline. I know you actively discouraged me from asking David and Jessica, prioritizing their social standing and avoiding conflict for yourselves, even when I told you Lily's life was at stake. You chose to protect their comfort over your granddaughter's chance to live. And I have it all documented, I said, my voice gaining strength. Every email where I begged, every date and time of your refusals, your exact words saying the wedding came first. I have the details of your $500,000 party, plastered all over social media. I have the medical records showing Lily's critical condition during those months. I have the proof of my own struggle, the crowdfunding, the loans, the selling of my belongings. It's all here. I patted my briefcase beside me, not just for my own peace of mind, but as a record of what you did, of what I had to do. Their faces were a mixture of shock, fear, and shame. They hadn't expected me to be so prepared. So cold, so powerful. They expected a heartbroken mother who would be grateful they finally showed up. Instead, they found a woman who had moved past them, saved her daughter despite them, and now held all the cards. You want forgiveness? I asked, leaning back. You want me to make your problems go away? To tell the world we're one big happy family now? I looked at David, then Jessica, then my parents. Lily is alive today because of the kindness of strangers, the hard work of doctors and nurses, and my own desperate fight. Not because of you. You had the chance to be heroes, to do something truly meaningful with a fraction of your excess. You chose to be villains, and you succeeded. I stood up. Mr. Chen stood with me. Your problems now? Your financial crisis? Your damaged reputation? Those are the consequences of your choices, just like my debt and the trauma of having to beg for my daughter's life are the consequences of your choices. I looked at them one last time. Don't ask me for forgiveness. Don't ask me for help. I saved my daughter's life without you. I built a new life for us without you. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences. I turned and walked away. Mr. Chen following me? I didn't look back at their pleading faces, their crumbling facade. The fight was over. I had won. Not by getting money from them when I needed it, but by saving Lily despite them, and then facing them from a position of strength, armed with truth and proof, making them confront their own cruelty when they were finally vulnerable. Lily is doing wonderfully now. She's healthy, happy, thriving. The debt from her treatment is a heavy burden, one I'm still working to pay off. But it's debt for a future, for a life saved, and I carry it with pride. My life is quieter, less extravagant than the one David and Jessica inhabit, or used to inhabit. But it's real. It's built on love, resilience, and the support of people who actually showed up when it mattered. I left my old job and now work for a nonprofit that helps families navigate the financial burden of catastrophic childhood illnesses. It's meaningful work, giving back to the community that helped save my daughter. As for David, Jessica, and my parents, David's financial situation worsened significantly. He faced legal battles and had to liquidate assets at a loss. The lavish wedding became a symbol of his irresponsible excess just before his downfall, a detail widely commented on by those who knew about my story. Jessica's reputation was tarnished by association, impacting her career. Their perfect world crumbled, not because of me, but because their own choices, both the cruelty towards Lily and the financial recklessness, caught up to them. My relationship with my parents, and with David and Jessica, is non-existent. The trust is irrevocably broken. There are no family dinners, no holiday gatherings. They made their choice. And I made mine, to build a new life free from their toxicity and conditional love. The thought of forgiveness, of letting them back in, feels like a betrayal of everything Lily and I went through, and a dismissal of the kindness of the strangers who actually helped. This journey taught me the brutal reality that sometimes the people who share your blood can be colder than strangers. It taught me that true family isn't about genetics, but about love, support, and being there when it truly matters. It taught me the power of fighting for what's right, documenting the truth, and facing injustice head-on. Not for revenge, but for accountability and to reclaim your own power. I saved my daughter. And in doing so, I saved myself. But having faced that level of cruelty, seen them prioritize a party over a life, and then watched them only come begging for forgiveness when it served their needs. Knowing everything that happened, seeing them face consequences for their choices, and remembering their complete lack of empathy when Lily was dying. Do you think someone like Sarah should ever forgive David, Jessica, or her parents? Or is cutting them out completely the only way to ensure her and Lily's continued peace and well-being?